draw?
Whatever the best card in his deck is.
That's right, double colorless energy.
I know my Pram.
Unfortunately, I don't think it does a lot for him. I think he has one Pokemon in the discard pile. Mind Jack is doing a mere 40 damage. Neither of his early options doing a whole lot. So even though that was a great top deck in most situations, he just hasn't done enough to make this attack really be worth anything.
Doesn't even have a choice band to follow up that double colorless energy. So really just 40 damage, not enough to threaten the Tapu Lele all that much because of the lack of Pokemon in the discard pile and the lack of bench Pokemon in Chris's side of the board. So, I mean, it is what it is. Sometimes you just don't have the right aggression, but that's 2 games in a row here that Pram really hasn't been able to put pressure on Chris. And that means Chris gets to get another Metagross GX, just like game 1, before Pram can really get any aggression going, which just puts Pram in just a back foot here because he's got to start setting up his Flareons. He's got to start avoiding getting Lysandered out. He's just behind in almost every sense of the word, even though it's not like Chris has really had an explosive start either. He's just gotten a turn 2 Metagross.
That's still pretty good. Turn 2 Rare Candy Metagross GX. Turn 2 a 250 HP Pokemon hits the board. He could retreat and use Algorithm GX, but decides to just Geotech System the 1 to Tapu Lele GX and go for the Beacon with Alolan Vulpix, searching for 2 Pokemon and putting them into his hand. And this will put Pramawat in an odd situation where he's going to want to find an N. Otherwise, Christopher gets to keep whatever 2 Pokemon he searches for. I think he needs to find either an N or a Lysander to perhaps knock out Beldum this turn. Otherwise, Pramawat is in rough shape.
So he is looking through the cards in his deck, deciding which cards he wants to beacon for. And it turns out he's just going to go for a Beldum and a Metagross. That does tell us he likely has a rare candy in his hand because he did not go for the Metang. But, I mean, Pram, if he doesn't have access to that end, he's just going to have to, deal with it in a sense.
Oof.
And
yeah, just a Mind
It looks
Jack.
like he didn't. It looks like all he could really muster up was a single Mind Jack, which does give him a knockout. But,
Oh,
I mean,
boy.
now he's facing down 2 Metagross GXs, both of which can Geotech system up.
Systems are online.
Yeah.
Geotech System 2, Metagross GX on board for Christopher.
What a beautiful board for Chris.
This is not what you want to see if you were on the other side of this. And Christopher actually
Wow.
taking the turn to Lysander out that Eevee. Not a thing you see very often, but he understands Flareon is the one thing that's going to make his Metagross GX vulnerable, and decides to target down the Eevee. And we'll see if Michael can respond at all with perhaps a knockout on this Tapu Lele GX.
He absolutely needs a knockout here. If he doesn't get a knockout, he'll definitely be behind, maybe even too far behind on board to really catch up, especially once your Eevee gets knocked out. That means that your other Eevee will be in that awkward position where he can always get Lysandered up on that one turn that he gets dropped down. So I see this as an uphill battle for Pramawat, but absolutely a much bigger uphill battle if he can't get a knockout on this Tapu Lele.
Yeah, I think I would be happy with a knockout on Beldum. He would go down to 4 prize cards instead of being at odd numbers. So if he could Lysander, knock out Beldum, that would be probably his best play this turn. I mean, taking a knockout on Tapu Lele GX would be great too, but I think that would have been the optimal thing if he were able to do it. But unfortunately, has to Professor Sycamore, and if I'm not mistaken, he has now discarded both special charges, and that means he is limited to 4 energy cards for the entirety of this game. And this seems to be slipping away from Michael Pramawat. Christopher Schemanske gaining control by the turn, and we'll see if there's anything his opponent can do about it.
Yeah, as if Pram didn't already have enough problems, getting those special charges in his discard pile is an even bigger deal. Because Christopher Schemanske's board means is big enough that he'll start being able to knock out these big attacking Pokemon from Pramawat. So these double colorless energies, while they're plentiful right now, will start getting whittled away, which means Pramawat has to secure enough resources to get his final 4 prizes of the game. Now, let's keep in mind he did have a big turn here on his previous turn.
Yeah, he got the knockout on Tapu Lele GX. Goes down to 3 prize cards. And I think even the bigger thing here, Christopher just evolved his Beldum into Metang, an easily knocked out Pokemon. If Pramawat can find Lysander on the following turn, he can knock out Metang, go down to 2 prize cards, and then, I mean, he still has a tall task in front of him. He has to knock out 1 Metagross GX, but it's a lot better than having a knockout too.
And we actually saw how Christopher didn't even rescue Stretcher this last turn. He just discarded it before he Sycamored. He could have rescue Stretchered for, actually, I don't even know if he has a Beldum in his discard pile. He might not have.
Yeah, he could have just used it to shuffle Tapu Lele GX back into his deck, give himself some better draws later in the game, but maybe he doesn't even want to have that in his deck anymore. He just wants Metagross GX and nothing else.
Like you said, the Geotech system is online, and it is just starting to pay dividends right here as we saw 2 more energy cards get brought back from the discard pile, which does allow him to Giga Hammer for 150 damage, knocking out that Zoroark, and that is 1 double colorless down with only 3 remaining.
Great draw for the turn for Michael Pramawat. Finds the Lysander for the turn. So I think he's going to want to go after that Metang on the bench, go down to 2 prize cards, and I think if he had his way, he would get an Eevee on the board to threaten that Flareon for the next turn. And, oh, there it is.
Well, I guess he does have his way as that Eevee does come down. That puts Schemanske in a very awkward position. Does he have the Lysander? And if he does, will he Lysander to knock out this Eevee? This is huge for Michael because not only will he take this prize if he does have a Lysander for the Metang, but he'll also put Schemanske in a very awkward position. There is that Lysander. Here comes the Metang. Metang in the active position. You better believe that it's going to get knocked out before the end of Michael's turn.
Yeah, of course. He's going to be able to be revenge for enough damage. Right now there's only 9 Pokemon in the discard pile, but 110 is certainly enough to take down Metang. And we see he also has double colorless energy in hand. This game he does have Oranguru on the bench to instruct in case Christopher is able to play an N. And now we're entering a strange territory. He's going to take the knockout, go down to 2 prize cards. Christopher knows that Flareon is an option. What do you do if you're him? If you have a Lysander, do you play it? Would you rather play N? I don't really know the answer to that.
That makes 2 of us. My gut says that it's probably going to be Lysander up the Eevee and then start doing the max potion shenanigans and hope that that's enough. I think that's going to be the way you're going to go about things just because...
Oh, never mind. Here comes Karen.
Okay, well, that answers that question.
And this is the tech card you play specifically for these Vespiquen decks. It is about as hard of a counter as you can get outside of that Oricorio. And it forces both players to shuffle all Pokemon in their discard pile back into their deck. So all that hard work Pramawat did to get those Pokemon in the discard pile, now his Be Revenge is reset to just 20 damage.
Yeah, we might as well wipe those dice away here from Michael's discard pile as he no longer has any Pokemon in his discard pile, which means Be Revenge will be doing only 20 damage, 50 if he has Choice Band, and even if he has a Flareon, that's just not enough damage to deal with this 250 hit point monster. Michael's going to need an unfathomably powerful turn on his next turn in order to really knock out this Metagross. And Christopher doesn't even give him that option. Christopher just retreats and brings up the Tapu Lele. He does have access to the 2 Geotech systems, which is just enough damage to knock out this Vespiquen here. And now you have a Tapu Lele, which has 170 hit points and no weakness, which is incredibly relevant once you're facing down this potential Flareon from Pramawat.
Yeah, I think that was a very smart play. And you know, if your opponent has Flareon, that Tapu Lele GX actually has effectively more HP than Metagross GX. An attack from Vespiquen would only need to do 130 damage with the Flareon in play.
Only.
Whereas against Tapu Lele GX, you have to do 170. So I think that's a brilliant play on Christopher's end. Put out the Pokemon that is most likely to be able to take a hit, and hope that your Karen can take you where you need to be. And that's, you know, surviving and using Max Potion and eventually playing N and just using Giga Hammer on your way to victory.
That Ultra Ball will be discarding more Pokemon here for Pramawat, but it will more importantly find him that Flareon. Flareon, not easy to deal with outside of a Lysander and a couple of Geotech systems, but then that powers up your Tapu Lele to the point where your opponent's Tapu Lele could definitely threaten to knock you out right back. So it's a pretty big gamble here.
There's a lot going on here for sure, as we do see Professor Sycamore I think the big story right now is how many double colorless energy does Michael Pramawat have left?
At the very least, he's got one, and it's in his hand right now, which is, again, a pretty big draw when you have no special charges left in your deck. Every time you draw these double colorless energies, you do get very, very fortunate to do so.
Yeah, so we do see Klefki. I think he's just going to attach these with Wonderlock and hope they, well, at the end of Christopher's turn, they're just going to fall off and go to the discard pile. That's one of the nice things about when your opponent plays Karen. A lot of your Pokemon, like the Unknown, like the Klefki, can put themselves back in the discard pile on their own. You don't need to play things like Ultra Ball and Acro Bike to discard those things again. In this case, though, he'll have to wait till the end of the turn to get that benefit.
Pram does bring down his Zorua, which could become a Zoroark on its next turn. And that's just another card that Schemanske has to play around. Does not want to bring too many Pokemon onto his bench to get a big Mind Jack going, but all Pramawat can really do is be revenge for 60 damage. Not nearly enough, but that does mean that the Tapu Lele can no longer attack freely.
So we do see the big max potion.
Just kidding.
From Christopher, and he's just going to continue to attack with Tapu Lele, I think. If he can get another energy card, he can Geotech System 2 more times and take the knockout again with Energy Drive. There are only 4 Pokemon in Michael Pramawat's discard pile. There will be 6 after the Klefki go to the discard pile, and then 8 if the Vespiquen gets knocked out. So we're starting to get to the point where if he finds double colorless energy, Lysander, and a Choice Band, he can win the game on the next turn. But look how many cards are in his deck. A lot of those are just Pokemon that he can't do anything with. The odds of him finding what he needs at this stage in the game are very low.
So here's the thing: is Schemanske needs to draw an energy to knock out this this Vespiquen here for Michael.
Oh, he missed.
He missed the energy though, which is only 80 damage. Like I said earlier, it is not guaranteed that you're going to draw your energy off of your ends, especially when you get down to 3-card and 2-card ends. And sure enough, Christopher does miss that crucial energy card, which means Michael's Pokemon, Vespiquen specifically, does not get knocked out. This is huge for Michael, as now he's got another free turn with that double colorless energy that he so badly needs to have. The Pokemon count does start going up. It starts rising as these Pokemon start entering the discard pile. He now has 7 Pokemon in his discard pile. That's 90 base damage that you're dealing with Be Revenge here.
Yeah, he also has an awkward hand. Looks like he has Ultra Ball, which he would love to play, but he also has Versus Seeker, which he would not like to discard with Ultra Ball.
Another max potion here gets rid of all of the damage and all of the work that Michael's had to work through. And Sycamore here will draw Christopher 7 new cards. Christopher here starting to get a pretty large lead when it comes to the board, but Pramawat still only has two prizes remaining, which means a single knockout through weakness because of Flareon will be enough for him to bring the game back to a game 3.
This game is extremely intense and down to the wire. Still anyone's game here in the finals of the Madison, Wisconsin Regional Championship. So much on the line here. Lots of championship points, a $5,000 first prize. And
glory.
And I have no idea who is going to win. It's so close, even after the Karen from Christopher and the Flareon on Michael's side. Both players having ways to counterplay the other. But it might come down to this. Does Pramawat find a way to take a knockout on this turn?
Double Geotech System does give Tapu Lele enough energies to attack. An Ultra Ball will find Michael any Pokemon in his deck.
Ooh, that puts an Eevee in the discard pile as well. That's 10 Pokemon in the discard pile now.
All he would have needed was a double colorless energy here because he's already got the Versus Seeker in hand, but he does not have it. I wish I would have paid attention to see how many double colorless are left in his deck. I think there's only 1.
Yeah, I think there's just 1. And I think he kind of wants to just go for broke here. He's going to Ultra Ball for the Unknown, and that will put Pokemon number 11 in the discard pile, which is the magic number. That means he does 130 damage with Be Revenge.
All right, Instruct draws 2 cards. Unknown Farewell Letter. Acro Bike now. Does he find what he needs? An Ultra Ball gets discarded. Which card was found through that Acro Bike? All he needs is double colorless energy. Another Unknown.
Oh my goodness.
The double colorless energy does get found from the Farewell Letter, the final Farewell Letter he would have had. And that does mean that we are going to see a Game 3, Kyle.